Okay, just finishing off the last sugya, Machabus said he got up to here. So to make a long story short, we had machlokes that there's no yibum to a brother that he never saw, and we hold like the Rabbanan that that's a blanket statement that if he didn't see him in his lifetime, so there's no yibum. But Rab Shimon was the whole discussion that he argues, and the question was how much does he argue, and it comes out that he only argues when he was born, when this new brother was born, he found his sister-in-law as not being the widow of the deceased brother, because that's history, but now we found her as being married to another brother that he does see. So that's the case that Rab Shimon says that there is Ibum, and we delete the history. And he would agree that if when he came into the world, he met her as the widow of his deceased brother, then there would not be Ibum. That was the whole sugya that took time to find out what Rab Shimon held, but that's their maskana. And now the Gemara wants to figure out what is the difference. Why should it be mutter? Why should Rab Shimon hold that as mutter if when he was born, the widow was already married to another brother? He did Yibum, Reuven, Shimon, Levi. Reuven died. Shimon married Reuven's widow, and then Levi's born. He finds her as being already married to Shimon. So why is it mutter? The Gemara said the reason why it's mutter is because when he was born, when he came, he found her in the state of heter because he found her as being married to a live brother that he does know, that he was in the same world, and she never was usher to him. Period. So let's get on the screen over here. Might help. This was the case of Shimon, that there were two brothers. One of them died, and Reuven died. Shimon married her, and then Shimon died. So then Levi's born. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. Shimon married her, then Levi was born, and then Shimon died. So he's allowed to do Yibum. Levi could do Yibum to her because he finds her, when he came into the world, he found her as being married to Shimon, and not anymore the history that he was in. And that's Yibum Bakach. No lot of Shimon says that is good. So the Gemara is asking, there are other cases in the Mishnah also that when he found her in a state of heter, and why not say that it's mutter? Here's the case. There was a man who had a son and a woman that had a daughter, and they got married. The kids got married. The parents also got married, and they had another son. So let's say this son was born later. So this was a permissible marriage, even if the parents were married already. Also, the kids were not from the common parents, so they'd be allowed to marry. And here it says that so he's a half brother and a half sister. So now when this man dies, so his wife should fall to his brother, but he can't take her because it's his sister. Even though it's a sister only from my mother, it's also there's an erva even by maternal half relatives. So this is the case of the Mishnah that says that a person cannot do Yibum to his half sister. Choso me'imo. And the one is asking if when he came into the world, she was already married to his brother. They married first. And then he was born. So you're going to say that since when he came into the world, he met her as being his brother's sister, that it's permissible to marry her? And we forget about the history that it's also a sister?
It's erva. What's going on?
Yes, the Gemara says surely that's erva. So the Gemara doesn't understand what's the difference between this case and this case. How come Rab Shimon says that when he came into the world, Yibem v'yachar nolad, that if when Levi was born, he found his Reuven's widow to have been already married to Shimon, then he's allowed to do Yibum, and we delete the history. How come? She's also the widow of Reuven, even though she's already married to Shimon, but the history was that she was once upon a time married to Reuven, and that was not Ba'olamo. So why should this be more mutter than any case? The Gemara seems to find the complicated case. There might have been other cases also, but not going into it, just saying the Gemara's case, when this person was born, this Shimon over here was born, he found his sister having been already married to his brother's wife. So how come you don't say that the Isser of being the sister is deleted? That's history. And now it's his brother's wife.
Yeah, but that the previous example was at Sarah, and this is
No Sarah, no Sarah. There's no Sarah over here. Especially there's no Sarah in this picture.
Right, but the other brother is
there's an Eshes Shaloi. He never saw Reuben, Shimon, Levi. Levi never saw Reuben. When Levi was born, Reuben already had died. But before Levi was born, Shimon had already done Yibum to the widow of Reuben, but she was supposed to have done. And Levi then was born, and he did see Shimon. They did live in the same world. So then Rav Shimon says he's allowed to do Yibum.
Marry her. Now,
because we delete the history that she also happened to have been the widow of Reuben.
Now back to our case.
And then we're saying, so if you delete history, so when he came into the world, he met this woman as being his brother's wife. So forget about that, he's the sister. There might be cautious on that. I'm just reading the Gemara.
Pretty hard. It's definitely a difference between that and the first case.
That's the most kasha elamayata. If you say that you delete the history, because when he came into the world, he never saw her as an isser. So achoso meimo shenasa achav meyavid, a sister from his mother's side that married a brother from his father's side. We could say that this person wasn't born yet. I made in the picture, he wasn't even born yet. Achia says a brother was born. It could have been another. Let's leave it like that. I think it's all the same. And then Mace, the brother died. Tisyabeim, let him do yibum to his sister. Better, because when he came into the world, he found her as being his brother's wife. The answer is where did it go that there's the Esther of a sister? She's still a sister also. So the one says, so how come you're erasing the history that this was a brother that he never met? Even though now he met her as the wife of Shimon, but she also was the widow of Reuben, and he never met Reuben. The Gemara answers, Ha Yisua de Las Leitera, Ha Yisua de Isla Leitera. The words just mean that the Isser of Eishes Achiv Shloibal, Eishes Achiv, means every time you have an Eishes Achiv, every time you have a brother's wife, the Isser it's always a brother's wife. Whenever someone does Yibum, it's always doing a brother's wife. The Isser of a brother's wife sometimes goes off. Here we're saying that this Isser, which Isser does he have to Eishes Achiv Shloi B'Alamo? In what way is she also because of Reuben? Because even though there's a heter of Yibum, the heter of Yibum doesn't apply over here, and it's a brother's wife. A brother's wife is Asa. But the Gemara says the Isser of a brother's wife is not so chamor as other Isurim because it does go off by Yibum when there's no children and it's in the same world. It is in the same world, so they did see each other. So there is a heter. So the Isser of Eishes Achiv is not as chamor as the other Isurim. So this one, if there's a recent his current history, so then it's possible maybe to erase the old history.
Because his middle brother, what's his name? Shimon?
Shimon, yeah.
Shimon married Reuben's wife, and he wasn't born. Levi wasn't born,
and then Levi was born.
Right. So it's kilo that there's only now the Hebrew marriage of Shimon.
That's the Gemara asking. How come you're deleting the history? There was a history before that. Why are you deleting the history? There might be cautious, but that's the words of the Gemara. The Gemara's caution was, how come this is going to be mutter, and how come the case of a sister is not deleted, since now it's the brother's wife? And the Gemara says because this Isser of a brother of a sister is a strong Isser, right, and the Isser.
It's a blood.
Okay, there might be cautious. That's reading the Gemara, and this Isser is sometimes permitted. The Isser of a brother's wife sometimes is permitted. It's even though in this particular case it's not permitted, because it was lo haya balamo, but still, it's easier to delete that history than to delete history of other arayos. That's what the Gemara seems to say. Okay, but just to point out again, we don't pass like Rav Shem, we pass like to Rabbanan, and lo haya balamo is always going to be awesome. Let's get ready for the next Mishnah. Okay, next Mishnah. Now, if anybody had difficulty with the past couple of dafim, we can start new. Everybody's invited to come in again because it doesn't have, it's easier and it doesn't have a reference to the sugis before. Hope that everybody will enjoy. There's a general rule in yevamos. That's what we've been doing for the past 20 days. That If there's an erva, means that there are two brothers and one of them has a wife and he dies, but the wife cannot do even to the brother because there's an erva. We had 15 cases of this erva, and we're going to say that this is a chiyav kores. All the 15 cases were chiyav kores, so he cannot marry her, and therefore what happens? She goes out. She marries somebody else. Lo yibum, no chalitza. She just goes. That's the standard case that we have been talking about, and this was like the simplest case you can get, right? That there's an erva, so they don't do yibum or chalitza. Also, we had the tesoro. Also doesn't. That's not our issue anymore. That's the first thing. Kol sheyis erva lo chalases lo mishavemes. You don't need yibum. You can't do yibum. You don't have to need chalitza. It just goes around. How about it's a mitzvah of it's a kedusha? Then the din is going to be chalases lo mishavemes. So it's the same idea. But it's not as serious of an error. It's not a chiyav kores. Like we said till now, this is kores, a chiyav kores. Like we had the 15 cases, a sister, whatever, a daughter-in-law. How about if the relationship is not so chamor? It is chamor, but it's going to be called it's a mitzvah, it's a kedusha, which the Gemara will say soon what those mean. One is going to be a chayv lavin, that it's a lav. It's a deraisa, but it's not chayv kores, or even less, that it's only a drabanan. So then it does. In the same case, that two brothers and one of them died, then his wife is now a relationship to the live brother, and he's not allowed to marry her.
The question is, can he do yibum?
But he cannot do yibum. He cannot do yibum because there is some kind of an issa the raisa, issa drabanan. But they do have to do chalitza. It's not like before that nothing is necessary. She just goes free. She doesn't have any kind of shiba to the family. She just goes. But if it's a mitzvah, it's a kedusha, she does need chalitza. That's what that kind of zigzag is supposed to represent. They do have to do chalitza. The next part of the Mishnah. What's that? We don't know yet what Ism Mitzvah Kedusha means. I just said it means the Raisa Rabbanan, but we'll see the Mishnah is going to explain further. Yes,
in the first one we had the two reds. The reason that it's usher is because it's an Ereva, right?
Right. This means kores.
Which means kores. Krisis.
Right. Uh-huh. No, it's not kores. Now it's only going to be a lav. Issa the Raisa or Issa Rabbanan, then it can't do yibum because there's an Issa standing in the way, but she can't go without anything. She does need chalitza.
Uh-huh.
And now the next case, the Mishnah says, so we had reference to this case before, and now we'll put it again. So usually if you have this scenario, this is called usually cannot do yibum. What's the case of a chosa sheyivim? That means two sisters that are also sisters-in-law. How do you have two sisters that are two sisters-in-law? They're two brothers married two sisters. Both of them died. So now both of them died, and now there's a third brother.
So yevamto is
yevimto means a sister-in-law. That's what the word. Really, that's what the word yevamos always means. That means a sister-in-law. Not only the mitzvah of yibum. It's not a new word that the Torah invented to make for the issa. It's called like it says by Rusa Norpa. It says hine shava yevim teif. There's nothing to do with yibum. It just means another way of saying a sister-in-law. The two Rus and Orpa were called yevamos because they're sisters-in-law. So a person is supposed to be miyabim. He's supposed to sister-in-law. He's supposed to take her as a sister. So here it says there's two sisters that are also sisters-in-law. How happened? They married two brothers. Two married two sisters. So those are sisters that are sisters-in-law. So now if both of them die, so really he should do yibum. To both of them. He can't do both of them because he's going to marry sisters. Right. So that can't be. But let him take at least one. Let him take one, then the other one he can't take. Also, no, he doesn't take any one of them because that's called achos kukasa. Since both of them are kuka to him, both of them are supposed to get married, do yibum, but he can't. But then it's also, and just like he can't marry the wife, the sister of a wife, achos ishto, he also cannot marry achos kukasa. So therefore, he cannot marry either one of them because each one is going to be a chos kukaso. Can you take this one? No, because she's the sister of skukaso. And you cannot take this one because she's the sister of skukaso. So you can't take either one of them. That's the background. And now the Mishnah says that there is a case. There is a case. I forgot to, I had to white it out, but I forgot to fill it in again. Just imagine here another brother that died, two brothers that died. But here, he's an heir to one of them. Achosa shaleva, there are three brothers. Two brothers married two sisters, and then both of them died. But he cannot marry one of them because she's Mamash and Erva.
Well, that one for sure not, but how about the other one?
And out of this, he could take this one.
Yeah,
this Yabemis. Why could he?
Why could he? Because there's no Zakuka.
Very good, beautiful. Chaim David, you got it. You're into Yabemis. That's called. It's not called a Chos Kukoso. This one is not called a Chos Kukoso because she's not as kuka. Since there's an erva that's stopping them, so she's not as kuka. So this one is not a chos kuka, so let her marry her. And that's what the Mishnah says. Mishnah inside. There's a case that doesn't achosa. You have to make the mapake. Achosa, her sister, who the erva that I mentioned before. If one of them is there's an erva, the sister of an erva, who's also a sister-in-law, kidu chalitza yibum. Why? Because it's not called a chos kukasa, because she's not skuka. That's Chaim David so eloquently said that she's not a skuka. That's the end of the Mishnah. The Mishnah goes back to explain what do I mean when I say it's a mitzvah, it's a kedusha. It didn't explain. It just said it's a mitzvah, it's a kedusha. It doesn't say what it is. So the Mishnah says it's a mitzvah means shnius with divrei sofer, and that means rabbanan. Divrei sofer means rabbanan. Shnios means that we'll see later on when we get to the shnios what they are, and it means that rabbanan made like another generation of erva, even though erva also has limitations, what's called an erva, but the Chazal added on rabbanans. Those are called shnios. Shnios is the term used for erva rabbanan. We'll see later on. They made more relationships to be considered erva, even though with the rights of the night. So that means this is rabbanan. What does this kedusha mean? In short, this kedusha means a chayve lavin, which means that it's not krisus. The union is not going to be chayv krisus. It's going to be only a lav, isa deraisa. And the Mishnah gives a few examples. Amana lekoin gadol, kusha v'chlutza lekoin hediot, mamzer sunasin el yisrael, bas yisrael l'nasin ol mamzer. I think I have some diagrams over here. Later down, here we have some. Here's Amana lekoin gadol. Here's a case of the kohen gadol, two brothers. He must be a kohen also. He has a brother from the same father. So there also is a kohen. And he died, and he has a wife, but the wife now is an almana because she's a widow, right? Her husband died. So a kohen gadol can marry an almana. What's this to marry almana? Kohen gadol to marry an almana. What? So he said. So he's saying two things. It says two things. It says b'sulame mavi kachisha, you should marry a virgin. That's a pas mitzvah saseh. Also, it's a lo saseh. It says almana gusha v'chalalo say lo yikach. It says lo yikach. It says don't. A kohen gadol is not allowed to marry this almana. It's on two counts. It's an asay and a lo asay, so you cannot marry her. So this is called the chayve lavin. So the Mishnah said before that this is a case. So we said that a chayve lavin is a mitzvah kedusha, has to have chalitza. He can't marry her, but he does have to give chalitza. She can't go out to marry somebody else without her giving chalitza. That's a grush. That's almana lekoin gadol. A grusha v'chalutza lekoin hediot. That would mean that the kohen is a regular kohen hediot, two brothers. He's also the hard kohen. There's a question of what happened, but somehow he married a grusha v'chalutza. How did he do it? We'll get to it. He's not allowed to.
Woman is a grusha.
How could a kohen marry a grusha?
I'm saying you can't.
Okay, that's the problem. But somehow his brother married the grusha b'chalutza. Well, from a previous marriage. From a previous marriage, she had. She was married and got divorced, or that after her husband died, the previous husband died. So then the brother of that husband gave her chalitza, and then she went ahead and married him. How is that possible? He's a kohen. How could he marry? Okay, question. But now that he dies, so the brother over here, the kohen hediot, is not allowed to marry her because the kohen hediot is not allowed to marry grusha b'chalitza. But again, it's chayve lavin says you do need chalitza. Again, that's going to be the case of issa mitzvah issa kedusha. This is issa kedusha issa deraisa that they do need chalitza. The next case is mamzer sunasin el Yisrael, a regular Yisrael. He had a brother Yisrael that also lachori shouldn't have married her because this woman was a mamzeres or Nasina. Nasina, we'll see that's from the Givonim. Also has the same thing as a mamzeres, and he wasn't allowed to marry her. We'll see in the Gemara eventually. I think it's going to talk about it, not today. I don't know how far down the road it's going to talk about it. And the brother married her somehow, and now that he died, she falls to Ibn to the Israel. He's not allowed to marry, can't marry. So it's chayve lavin again. It's a chayve lavin, and therefore chalitza without yibum. And the opposite case, the Mishnah also says.
What was the second word? There's mamzeres.
Nasina. You can look in the Mishnah. Nasina will show in the Mishnah also.
Nasina, yeah.
That's the feminine of the word nasin. And here's a case where the man is a nasin or a mamzer. And this marriage might have been a regular marriage. He had a brother. Okay, we'll see how was the brother. Okay, whatever the case was.
There are four cases.
Yes. So here's a case where the brother married a regular woman. If that was mutter or not, we'll leave it. And he died. And now she falls to her brother-in-law. But he's a nasin and a mamzer. He can marry. He's not allowed to marry. So therefore, again, chalitza. Four cases of
where you do chalitza. Where you have to do chalitza.
This is all chayve. What is this called? This is issa kedusha. This is going to be what the Mishnah calls issa kedusha, which we translate now as issa daraisa. These relationships are all issa daraisa.
All kedusha because
No, it's only. Only two are Kohanim. These are not Kohanim. So the Gemara is going to talk about it. The Gemara is going to say, why is it called Kedusha? Why is this called Mitzvah? Why Rabbanan is called Mitzvah? Okay. To continue. That was the Mishnah. Issa Mitzvah means Shneis from the Sofrim. Issa Kedusha means Amar L'Kohen Gadol. It gives four examples of Issa Kedusha. A Kohen Gadol to marry a widow. A Kohen Hedio to marry Grusha V'Chalutza. A Yisrael to marry Mamzeres and Nasina. Here's the word Nasina, like Yaakov. And a Bas Yisrael to be married to a Nasan Mamzer. All these cases are Issa Daraisa and the Chalitza. Okay, beautiful. The Gemara wants to know the first word that it says Klal Amru. Klal Amru. Klal Amru Biba. What's the Klal? So Gemara in the Mishnah is good, but the Gemara is saying more deeper. What is the word Klal coming to add on? Klal Lasu Imai. What is the word Klal coming to add on? Amrafim Bar Papa Lasu Yitzaros Islanders. So we had this many times, a couple of times. What's the name of islanders? That a man dies, but his wife cannot have children. And we spoke about even if not that it was a mekachtos, not that it comes out that it was whole thing was a mistake. He knew about it, but now that he dies, does his brother do yibum? So there's no yibum. Oh, here he is talking about Tsaros Islanders. He had another wife also. And this, I think I said right that he knew that she was an islandess, and he married her. He married another woman also, and he died without children. So the brother cannot do yibum to the islandess because the whole purpose of yibum is to have a child, Ashataylet, and she can't have children, so there's no yibum. And now the question is, does the tzara do yibum? So Ravasi said, Ravasi said that the Tsaros islandess also does not do yibum, and the Pasha says because this islandess is a brother's wife that there's no yibum to, so she's an erva. True. A man's brother died, and his wife was as an islandess, and he can't do yibum to her because so it's a eishesach shalom b'makam mitzvah. So she's an erva, like any kind of erva, and the tzara is a co-wife of an erva. So the tzara also doesn't do yibum.
Less of a level of erva.
No, it's a brother's wife. Okay, we said this morning that it's already a little bit less, but it's still it's eishesach no mitzvah. So there's no mitzvah. So she's usher to marry the yavam because she's a brother's wife without a mitzvah of yibum. So too, the tzara also cannot. So our Mishnah comes to say that the Klal Amru, this Klal has come to add on to this case also is going to, not only, even though she's not a regular erva of the 15 that I mentioned in the Mishnah, but she's also considered an erva. Eishesach, well, not a mitzvah, is considered an erva. Ikad Amri, a little different way to read the Mishnah.
But does he have to give them what's it called?
No, so there's no chalitza either because it's like the erva that it says in the 15 that the first case of the Mishnah. Let's go on to the chart a second. Not that it helps, but just to show that this woman in the top over here, this is erva of Kores. If she's an islandess, she's also a Kores. Why? Because it's a brother's wife without a mitzvah of yibum. So she doesn't do yibum, and also the tzara also. If she has a co-wife, also she doesn't do. And this would be a case. And this would be the case that is it'll be considered a brother's wife without the mitzvah. And then the Gemara says you can read the Mishnah a little differently. Ravasi's we said over there. Rabbi argues on Ravasi on that whatever page this is. Where is it? Yud Beis. It says maybe over here that others argue and say that it's true that she doesn't do yibum because she cannot have children, but she's not called the parsha since she can't have children. Right. So it's not even in the parsha. Not only that she's a brother's wife that she falls to yibum, and she's also a daughter, or also a daughter-in-law, something like that. That's 15 arayas. But this one, she doesn't fall to yibum at all because she can't have children, and therefore the tzara does do yibum.
Right, I understand a little bit.
We had this machlokas before. Ravasi says not, and Rabbi says yes. Rabbi says she's not in the parsha at all. Rashi brought down there from the Shultas to explain the pshat of the Gemara. The Gemara doesn't explain. The Gemara says that Rabbi says that the tzara does do yibum, and the reason is because she's not in the parsha at all, and therefore when we look around, when the brother dies, who's falling to yibum? Only one woman, and therefore the tzara will do yibum to the live brother. So, and now the Gemara is going to say that it's possible to read the Mishnah that it means that also. You can read the Mishnah both ways. Either Klal is coming to include that there's more arayos besides the 15, and the arayos this is also considered an erva, or the Gemara is coming to say that only if it's an erva, and this is not called an erva, it's only called islandess, however you want to explain, and therefore the Mishnah is coming to say that she will do the Saras erva will do yibum. So the Gemara says both ways how you can read the Mishnah. How does the Mishnah read? How does the Gemara go? Klal Lasu Yemai. So first the Gemara says it's coming to include Saras islandess, as Ravasi says that a Saras islandess is also Chayiv Koros and they cannot marry. Ikadami calls you Isa Erba. Who does Sira Sarasa? Only those that are Isa Erba. That's what the Mishnah is saying. Klal Amru be Yevamos calls you Isa Erba. if it's Issa Erva, so then it's the Tzara is Aser. But Halo Isur Issa Erva, Tzara Lo Asira. But if the Isur is not an Issa Erva, like Ovesh is an islandess, so then the Tzara is Mutter. Lamute Mai was coming to exclude, not to include, it's coming to exclude. From Lamute Tzara's islandess, like Rabbi Yossi. We could learn the Mishnah is coming to say, like Rava, not like Ravasi, that the Tzara's islandess is yes Mutter because she's not considered Erva. She's not considered the Tzara's Erva because the islandess is out of the parsha at all. Okay, so we got the cloud. We know Ravasi already, we know Rav already before. Let's put it into the Mishnah. He's coming to say like Ravasi, he's coming to say against Ravasi. By the way, we had also a long time ago in the beginning of the Masechta, we had something that I skipped about 4 or 5 lines, and I said we'll come back. We didn't come back. I missed the time to come back. So whoever could go back on that daf over there and see. We mentioned about Rav and Ravasi, these different isurim over there. But the Mishnah continues. So we said in the Mishnah. I already wrote the Gemara's case, but I made Chosachi Ivimta. I had the red and the orange, right? This wasn't so bad. This is Mishras Kedusha. Then it says Chosachi Ivimta Mishabemes. That you have 2 sisters again. You have to fill in this one over here. There's 2 brothers married to sisters, and both of them died, but one of them is an erva. So what I said when I explained the Mishnah, really is what the Gemara is going to say, but the Gemara is going to go through the steps. Is it possible to say that if she'd be only Issa Mitzvah Issa Kedusha? What would be the din if it wouldn't be in the red? It would have been in the orange. It would have been that the relationship is going to be as a mitzvah, the rabbanon or the raisa, but it's not chayiv kares. Are you also going to say that she's not as kuka? That's going to be an issue over there. Will he be mutter to marry the one that he's mutter to? No. We finished. That's all. It's new planet. We finished about Tzoros Islanders already. That's all. New subject. It says in the Mishnah that even though usually if there's 2 sisters and 2 sisters-in-law, the one surviving brother cannot marry either one of them because it's called a chos kukaso. But if one of them is of erva, is asa to the remaining brother, so then he could marry the remaining one because it's not skuka. In order to say she's not skuka, is a dafka if it's going to be kore, so even if it's going to be issa kedusha and issa mitzvah. In order to say that the sister or the sister-in-law could. The tzara, the other wife, not the tzara, the other wife could marry the remaining brother. Is it only if it's Issa Erva? How about if it's Issa Mitzvah, Issa Kedusha? One of them is going to be, she's the grusha, she's not a grusha, whatever. The case would have been that he could marry her. He could not marry her, but not if he have chorus. He cannot marry her because if Issa the rice, Issa Rabbanan, that's not a chorus. It's not enough to make that she's not called a zkuka. That's what the Gemara talks about. So here's the Gemara. Achosa sheyivimta can do yibum. Achosa the man, whose sister? Who we talk? What kind of erba are we talking about? Either it's a mitzvah, or maybe it's a kedusha. That it is called zakuka. The fact that this woman who's only Issa Kedusha, or call it about, if the Gemara calls Issa Mitzvah, the Gemara says that we know Issa Mitzvah is going to be a Rabbana. Some of the Rai says she is Kuka. So you can't say that he's allowed to marry the other woman because she is a Chos Kukasa. Ella Chosa Desa Erva. You must say, when the Mishnah says that there is going to be Yibum to the sister-in-law who is a who's us, there's an issa between them, that's only if it's going to be issa the rice of kares. Then she's not called a chos kukoso because she's not as kuk at all. But if this relationship would have only been issa mitzvah, which is only rabbanan, so she is kukum with the rice. So then this woman would be a chos kukoso. He wouldn't be able to do yibum. So the Mishnah means if there's a relationship of one of them, which is erba, so then he could marry the other one. But if only it would be issa rabbanan, so then he wouldn't be able to.
And you have to give.
And then they give chalitza, right? Now the Gemara goes to what the Mishnah said. That it's a mitzvah means shnios, and it's a kedusha means chayvei lavin. So the Mishnah doesn't explain why is it? Why is it called that? Why is shnios? Why is it called issa mitzvah? Amai call it issa mitzvah. Why should the Tana call it issa mitzvah? What kind of term is that? It's a mitzvah to listen to the chachamim. The reason why the asa to marry is because it's a mitzvah. What's the mitzvah? The mitzvah to listen to the chachamim. That's the reason why you're not allowed to marry those shnios. That's the terminology why the Mishnah calls shnios the issa rabbana. Why he calls it a mitzvah? Because it's a mitzvah to hear what the chachamim say. Issa kedusha means the chayvei lavin. Almana l'kohen gadol l'gusha l'gusha l'kohen hediot. It goes on. Mamzeres nasa. I might call this a kedusha. Why they call it kedusha? Why is that the terminology that the Mishnah uses to say these isurim? The answer is the chsiv kedoshim yiyu le'elohim. They should be holy to their God. Who's it talking about? Parshas Emor, and it's talking about the kohanim. The kohanim is called kedusha. So that's what Rabbi started saying, that it only makes sense for 2 out of the 4. It says that the cases of Alman l'kohen gadol kedusha v'chlusa l'kohen hediot. Those cases we say is kedusha because the isser to marry a kohen gadol to marry an almana or a kohen hediot to marry a gusha is because of a kedusha, the kedusha of a kohanim. But the Gemara doesn't explain how about these cases. Why these called? Why Yisrael mamzeres and asindel Yisrael bas Yisrael nosan l'mamzer? Why is this called kedusha? So I'm not sure, but my Chabrusa suggested so far that it also has to do with the Kedushas Yisrael. Not any Chayv Yelav, and it has to do with Kedushas Yisrael. That the reason why they're not allowed to marry is because of a kind of a Kedusha, not the Kedusha of Kohanim. The Gemara is going to say soon another pasuk. This pasuk says Kedoshim Yiyul Elohim, which is a pasuk by Kedusha of Kohanim. There's another pasuk saying the Gemara is going to come up soon. It's Kadishim V'Yisim Kedoshim that says by Am Yisrael also. Maybe that's the pshat, or maybe since some of them are called Kedusha, we call all of them Kedusha, even though it doesn't have to do with that. The pasuk submission means any kind of Chayv Yelavin. And the examples given are something about Kedusha, but lav dafka. The point isn't Kedusha as much as Chayv Lavin, which is the Raisa without chorus. So that's how the Gemara explains the terminology of the Mishnah. Tanya, we learned in the Raisa of Yudah Machlef. This is a side point that even though our Mishnah calls mitzvah is Shnios Rabbanan, and Kedusha means this or the Raisa, or the Kohanim, but Rabbi Yudah, the Tana, explains differently than the Mishnah. He's also a Tana. He says different than our Mishnah. He says it's a mitzvah. That's the one that means the Issa the Raisa of Kohen, Amon L'Kohen God, Gusha V'Chlusa L'Kohen Hediot. And why is that called Issa Mitzvah? And my call Issa Mitzvah. The Siv Eile HaMitzvos. At the end of Sefer Vayikra, the last pasuk almost, maybe it's the last pasuk mamish. Over there it says these are the mitzvahs after the whole Sefer Vayikra, and it calls it a mitzvah. So all those things that it says about Kohanim, it calls it a mitzvah. That's why it's in the parsha over there, and that's why it's called mitzvah. And Issa Kedusha, what's that referring to? That's Rabbanan. It's only a question of terminology. It doesn't change any halachas over here. Everybody agrees to the same halachas. If it's the Raisa Rabbanan, that's a question of terminology. And Issa Kedusha means Shneis V'Devei Sofrim. Why is that so? Why is it called Kedusha on the Isum that Rabbanan created? Amai call Issa Kedusha. Amar Abai call Makam Devei Chachamim Nikra Kodesh. Whoever fulfills Rabbanans is called holy. And if he doesn't do it, so he's not called holy, but he's not called wicked. He's wicked. If he doesn't do the Rabbanan, he's even wicked. So you can't say that Kedusha means if you do the Rabbanan, you're called Kadosh. Because if you don't do it, if you refrain from the Issa Rabbanan, so then you're called the Kadosh. It can't be. To sanctify yourself with that which is permissible to you. It means that all the Rabbanans, they're really telling you to stay away from something which is permissible. That's called Kedusha. The Hagdara of Issa Rabbanan is called Kedusha because you're staying away from something which is technically permissible on the Raisa level. So that's all that Gemara was all about, the terminology. Let's explain the terminology. How come the Mishnah calls what it calls a mitzvah, what it calls Kedusha, but everybody agrees.
It's not a regular type of Gemara that goes into terminology.
The Mishnah itself is strange. The Mishnah says it's a mitzvah, it's a Kedusha, then it says what does it mean, and it tells you what it means. But now it's saying, so why give that terminology? That's what the Gemara goes in, and also brings up Yudah says the opposite. But everybody agrees, everybody agrees to all the halachas, that it's a mitzvah, it's a Kedusha, both of them together would mean the Raisa Rabbanan. But the question is which is which and why. But as far as the halacha goes, everybody agrees that these things do need chalitza. You can't do yibum because this is the Raisa is Rabbanan standing in the way. But since it's not kares, so it doesn't knock off the whole thing. You do have to have chalitza. Just there's no yibum possible because there's issur to marry this woman. The next subject the one's going to talk about is why. Why does yibum? Why doesn't he do yibum to a chayv lavin? This goes back to the beginning of the Masechta. We had asay dochalos asay. We learned the whole sugya over there, very many pages about asay being dochalos asay. And the Gemara wants to know that mitzvah of yibum is an asay. Why is it not dochalos asay? If it will be chayv koros, that was the beginning of the sugya of the Gemara, that the Gemara said asay is not dochalos asay sheish bo koros. So the first mission, he had 15 arais over there. So good that I say the more even wanted to know what do you need a pasuk for us. Pasuk, you don't need a pasuk of aleha because asay is not dochalos asay sheish bo koros. If you recall, where do we have asay dochalos asay? The source was klein betzitzis, that someone has a bag made out of linen. He has to put on tzitzis that has tcheles, which is wool. So you're doing shatnez, wool and linen. So asay dochalos asay, gedilam los l'bashatnez, gedilam tasalacha. Asay dochalos asay. So what the Gemara wants to know is how come you don't say in these cases of chayv lavin, why don't you say asay dochalos asay? In these cases, do yibum. The Kohen Gadol should marry the widow, because even though it's a losa asay to marry a widow, but there's a mitzvah to say to do yibum. So it comes in clash. Asay dochalos asay. Let the Kohen Gadol marry the woman, the almana, because asay, the mitzvah of yibum, his brother's wife, should override the isser that he's not allowed to marry a widow. And the same thing for all these cases. the Grusha to marry, the Kohen Gadol to marry the Grusha, the Yisrael to marry the Mamzeres, the Mamzer to marry the Yisbas Yisrael. The kasha should be Aseh Docholos Aseh. That's the Gemara's kasha. But the Gemara comes in from a side point. In this widow, how much was she married to the deceased brother? Was she already mamish married to him? The suin, it was already consummated, a full marriage, or was it just erisin that was just the kedushin, the kedushin without the nesuin? How much? So the Mishnah doesn't distinguish. So it's but even if the deceased brother had just done kedushin to her and did not yet consummate the marriage, still it would be considered the Kohen Gadol cannot marry her. And the one wants to know why. Bishlam amen nesuin. Asay v'los asay. Then I say the cholos asay v'asay. Elun erisin los asay gredu yovi asay v'cholos asay. So Chaim Dov starts talking about the mitzvah that he's not allowed to marry, that he has to marry a virgin. That's the mitzvah asay. And we said the pasuk says both. The pasuk says that the Kohen Gadol should not marry a widow. Almana lo yikach. And also it says that he should take a virgin. So if he takes this woman, he's going to be transgressing two averas.
That's surely not.
Right. This is going to be to take this woman is going to be transgressing the losa say don't take a widow, and also transgressing the positive commandment, take a virgin, because she's not a virgin. So the law is that ein asay docha losa say vase. So the positive commandment of doing yibum is not going to override a double, also on asay and a losa say. But so that the Gemara is not bothered with. But if, let's say, the brother did not consummate the marriage, it's only a kedushin and not nesuin, so then she still is a virgin. So it's only a losa say. So therefore, the Kohen Gadol should be able to marry her because asay docha losa say. And also, you could throw in all the other cases also, there's only going to be a losa say. There's no say over there. Kohen Gadol should not take a grusha. And also the other cases of Yisrael, so all the other cases also is going to be a losa say greater. And that's the more kasha. Why don't you say asay docha losa say? And the Rechai Ve'lavin, the kasha is, the yibum should override. It says in the pasuk that if the yavam does not want to, the brother-in-law does not want to do yibum, so it says that the woman, the sister-in-law, the widow, should go to the Sanhedrin and say that he doesn't want to do yibum, and then it says the whole parasha of chalitza. And it's an extra word. This word yevimto is it could have said volsa shara. We're talking about the woman. It says to do yibum, and if not, if he says he doesn't want, so she should go to the Sanhedrin. Why does it say the extra word yevimto? So it's an extra word. Shein tamad loma yevimto. It's not necessary to say that word. Ma tamad loma. Why yevimto? Why does it say that word? Yesh l'cha yevama achas acheres she'ola lachalitza ve'eno ola liyibam. It says in the pasuk that this woman that wanted yibum should happen, but the brother-in-law doesn't want to take her, so they do chalitza. But the pasuk has some nuance that this case is the choice of yibum or chalitza, but there's another case where there's no choice of yibum and still do chalitza. So therefore, we're going to have to find the case. What's the case that you're going to do only chalitza, not yibum? Be'ezazu. Vezo, Zuchai Ve'lavin. It must be that's talking about a case where you cannot do Yibum. Why not? Because there's a losa say, Isser, the rice is standing in the way, and the pasuk is saying only do Chalitza. Means even though according to the regular rules of Asay Dochalosa say he should be able to do Yibum, but the fact that the pasuk says there's a case where you can't do Yibum and still do Chalitza, it must be this case. That must be Chai Ve'lavin, and Torah is saying don't do Yibum. Since there's a lab standing in the way, even though usually we say Asay Dochalosa say, here it's not going to override and do chalitza. The more asks, it's such a nice drasha. Maybe say even chavi krisus also, even though he cannot marry her and he surely cannot marry her because you don't say asay decholosa asay on sheish bakares, but maybe at least do chalitza. Maybe the pasuk is coming to say they do at least chalitza. Amakra im lo yachbos ish lakachas hachafetz miyabein kalo liyibum ola lachalitza v'cholshena ola liyibum eina ola lachalitza. The pasuk does put it together that it says when do you do chalitza? When you can't do yibum. That means that always it goes together. It's a unit. It's a package deal, either yibum or chalitza or nothing. There's no case, as if to say there's no case of doing chalitza without yibum, which is the opposite of what we said a second ago. A second ago we said a drasha. Also, if into Ashar, that was a drasha to say that sometimes there is chalitza alone. That's the most kashi. If you're going to say it's a package deal, if there's no yibum, there's no chalitza, so chayv lavin also. The drasha doesn't make sense. The Gemara says no. There's a drasha on the other side. The Rabbi Rachman Yevimto. It does say a pasuk which is mashma that sometimes it's chalitza without yibum. So okay, so you have a contradiction. One pasuk says that there's no such thing as chalitza alone. The other pasuk says only if there's yibum is there chalitza, no yibum, no chalitza. The other pasuk says there is such thing as chalitza without yibum. What are you going to do? So how do you know which one to darshan is for? So the Gemara is going to say once you have a contradiction, we have to say it's talking about one of the two. So we're going to say it's more mistaber that chayv lavin is in the parsha a little bit more than chavi krisus. Chavi krisus says mamashat because it's a chavi koros, so there's no tfisus kedushin. Mistaber chayv lavin tafsibul kedushin. Chavi krisus like tafsibul kedushin. If somebody gives kedushin, he gives money, a ring to a woman who would be only a chayvei lavin, even though he's not supposed to do it, but it does take effect. They are married, even though he wasn't allowed to. But chayvei krisos doesn't take effect. If he gave kedushin, let's say to a sister, so nothing takes effect. There's nothing. So the fact that there's tefisas kedushin, so it makes more sense if the Torah by one of them said that there's going to be a chalitza without a yibum, it must be the case where there was a marriage. So that's why the Gemara would be happy to say that there's a drasha to say that when it's chayvei lavin, there's no yibum, but there is chalitza. So again, just to sum up so far, the Maras Takasha chayvei lavin, that he should say the regular klal should be asay dochel lo saseh, and he should be able to do yibum. The answer is that there's a pasuk that's mashma that the pasuk says sometimes there's no yibum, only chalitza, and it's referring to this case because of process of elimination. It can't be chayvei krisos, it must be chayvei lavin, and therefore there's a case of chalitza without yibum.
What's the true word that makes you say that there's a drush?
Yevimto. Also yevimto ashara. The word yevimto is extra.
What's the word ashara?
To the gate. The gate, but it means gate means Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin means the gate. They go to the Sanhedrin and they say, "Me'ein yevami." My brother-in-law doesn't want to do yibum, so they do chalitza. And the pasuk mashma that there's a case where there's chalitza only, even though the case of the scenario of the Torah is talking about where there is yibum or chalitza, and the reason why they're not doing yibum because he doesn't want. The pasuk mashma there's a case of chalitza without yibum lachatchila. What's the case when it's chayvei lavin? But the Gemara is going to knock this off. The Gemara is going to, according to what we said, just to give an introduction, the Gemara is going to say that you're saying that the Torah says there's no yibum, not that we have a clash. And what do we do in this case? And there's not going to. It's because there's and inherently the Torah didn't say the mitzvah of yibum in this case. That's going to be the Gemara's kasha that the Gemara is going to show that there is inherently a mitzvah of yibum. If they did do yibum, even though they weren't supposed to, it does take effect. The yibum it works. We'll see what the Gemara says about that. Masiv Rava. Mitzvah. There's a brayso. Kedusha ba'aleh o chalatzla niftarat sarasa. If you have this relationship of a mitzvah kedusha, the woman that falls to yibum, the widow, is the Issa Rabbanan to marry the brother, or Issa Rabbanan Issa Daraisa, but not krisos. So it says even though he should not have done yibum, but if he did, it takes a, and the widow and the co-wife it goes free. That's what it says in this brayso. Ba'aleh chalatzla. Now chalatzla was supposed to do chalitza. But it says here ba'aleh also. It says if he had he married her, he took her as yibum, and it says that the tzorah goes free. What does that mean? That it really worked. That he should not have married her, but he did. Again, a man has two wives, and he died. One of them is a Issa Rabbanan to his brother, or Issa Daraisa without chorus. And it says that we told the brother do chalitza to one of these wives, do chalitza. Because don't do yibum, because it's we just said don't do chalitza. It's a mitzvah, it's a kedusha. Don't do chalitza. Don't do yibum. But he did yibum. So it works, and therefore the co-wife can go free because one of the wives had yibum done to her. But if you say that over here, the Torah didn't invent the mitzvah yibum over here. Please talk about the chayiv v'lav the raisa chalitza v'amya. If you're going to say that on a Torah level, but the Torah says, do chalitza, don't do yibum, if he had relations with her, if he did yibum, why does the Torah go free? It wasn't kosher. The Torah didn't recognize such a kind of a yibum. The Gemara wants to show, the Gemara is trying to prove that even though you shouldn't do it, but it's in the parsha, the Torah does recognize it. And according to your drasha, the Torah doesn't recognize it even. That was, literally it means throne, but it means like the obligation. The obligation is for chalitza, the obligation is not for yibum, and therefore, if he did yibum, it shouldn't have taken effect, and the tzara should still need to be freed. She can't go free without anything. That was the Rava's kasha on Rav Gidlam Rav. Gidlam Rav was the one who said the drasha Yevimto has come to say that there's chalitza without yibum. If the Torah doesn't recognize such a kind of a yibum, so even if he did it, that shouldn't count. Rava said, even though I asked the kasha, I could answer it also. It means he asked the kasha, he answered it. The same one, Rabba, who asked the kasha, he's also going to say the teretz. That's not such a big kasha. This is katani. You could learn it that it depends. Ba'alaha ayisa mitzvah, chalatzla ayisa kedusha. Means the whole kasha is going to be that on the issa mitzvah, surely on the issa mitzvah, there's surely that the Rabbanan is not going to take away the yibum. Over there, the Torah, that on the Torah level, she's supposed to do yibum. The Rabbanan say don't do yibum. Over there, surely that there was no kasha in the first place that I should do yibum. The kasha is only by asay dochol asay. And on that, the answer was that the Torah took away the mitzvah. There's no mitzvah of yibum by Issa Kedusha. But by Issa Mitzvah, there surely is a mitzvah of Yibum. And at that, it surely makes sense that if he transgressed to the Rabbanan and he had relations with her, so surely it takes effect and the tzara could go free. So Rav is saying, I can answer that when it says here, Nifter Ratsa Rasa, it's only going to be if by Yibum, Ba'ala, Nifter Ratsa Rasa, Ba'ala, the Ba'ala is only going to be talking about on the Issa Mitzvah. The Issa Kedusha, if that he's saying by Issa Kedusha, Issa Daraisa, you're saying that there's no Pasha of Yibum, then it wouldn't be true. That only would be true if it's Chalitza. So we could get through it. We could get through this Brisa, that even though it seems to say that Yibum would take effect on Issa Kedusha, no, it doesn't mean that when it says Ba'ala works, it only means if it was Issa Drabonim. But if it would have been Issa Daraisa, then only Chalitza would help and Yibum would not help. Ba'ala Issa Mitzvah only. Chalatzla could go Issa Kedusha also. You could say then it would make sense by both of them that it does take Chalitza. Chalitza did what he's supposed to do, and the tzara goes free. But if he did Yibum, it only would take effect if it was only Issa Drabonim standing in the way. If it will be Issa Daraisa, it wouldn't take effect because the Torah says only do Chalitza, don't do Yibum. So that kasha we got through, but they were able to answer that kasha.
Rav answered himself.
Right, Rav asked the kasha and he answered it, so he didn't knock down yet to Gidlam Rav. But Rav is still on the attack. He's going to have a lot of kashas. He's going to have kashas to knock down of Gidlam Rav, who said that there's no mitzvah of Yibum, even though usually I say Dochalosa, say here the Torah says not. Masif Rava, Petzu Adaka, Kru Shavcha, Swiss Adam, Zakin. So here it says, oh, Cholz, there's a question. The Ger said, you say Cholzin of Miyaban or Ein Cholzin Velo Miyaban, whatever the guess is going to be. This case is talking about that the dead brother, the deceased brother, he was not supposed to have married her. Mesu v'lahem achim v'lahem nashim v'amdu achim v'asu ma'ima ben shoseyam v'nasu get v'cholzu masha asu v'imbalu kanim. This case is that brother who died he had some blemish in his organs, and that's allowed. There's allowed for we'll get to these sugis later on in the Masechta. Petzuadaka, Krushavcha, different kind of what's the word? I forgot. But blemishes in their genitals, and they're not supposed to marry Bas Yisrael. So there was a lav over there. Petzuadaka, Krushavcha, B'Kal Hashem. And also a Swiss is a sterile person, castrated. Zaken, it seems to say Zaken here also, even an old man also. So but we'll leave out all the details of but the dead brother was such. So there is still regularly, the live brother doesn't have all these problems. The dead brother had all these problems he wasn't supposed to marry. Not the Zaken, leave out the Zaken. But all these cases, the dead brother should not have married, but the live brother doesn't have all these problems. Mesu, V'lahem Achim, V'lahem Nashim. These people died and they have brothers and wives, means they have widows now, and the brother could do Yibum. And live brothers, they did either Mama or a get, or they gave Chalitza. All of them take effect. And also, if they did Yibum, it also takes effect. All these cases was that the dead brother had a problem that he shouldn't have married, and the live brother doesn't have those problems. So the live brother's Yibum is a good Yibum. That's not our subject. We go to the safe over here. Mesu achim v'amdu heim v'asu mama ben shesem v'nosnu get shecholsu. Here's the case where the live brother was not a problem. The live brother didn't have any of these problems, but the dead brother has a problem. I'm sorry, the dead brother did not have the problem. But now the live brother has the problem. So that's going to be a chayv laban. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for the safe over here. This is a chayv laban. The brother died, and the live brother now has the Isser, the Raisa, to marry the widow. That's what we're looking for. So it says here that also, Masha Asu, Ben Balu Kanu, Vasu Lakaiman, Mishum Shenem, here it says that he's not allowed, that even though the Yibum is good, and Balu Kanu, that's going to be the main words that we're looking for. That it says here that if they did a Yibum, it does take effect, but he shouldn't keep her because it's still Isser the Raisa. He's not supposed to marry her. So the live brother, who is a Psuadaka, Krushavcha, he's not allowed to marry that widow. He did. It takes effect, but he can't keep her because it's Issa Daraisa to remain with her. But anyway, what does it say? It says that it does take effect. The Yibum takes effect, even though there's a Chayv Lavin. This Brisa says that it takes effect. And here, the same kasha as the first kasha, but the first kasha we wiggled out of. We said it doesn't say that. It says in the Brisa before that said. So we said Ba'ala is only going on this mitzvah, it's not going on this the rice, only going on this Rabbanan. But here, the same kasha, but you can't get out of it. Here it says that in Ba'alu Kanu, even though there's the Issa the Raisa standing in the way, it says that it does take effect. If you're going to say that these Issa the Raisa, Midaraisa, they're only supposed to do Chalitza Midaraisa, they're not supposed to do Yibum in Balu or Maikanu. Same kasha over again, but here, no teretz so far. So the kasha again, that if you say that there's no mitzvah of Yibum at all, the Torah doesn't recognize the mitzvah of Yibum, it didn't give the mitzvah. The Torah said openly, in this case, only do Chalitza, both Yivim to Ashara, just to do Chalitza, not Yibum. So then there shouldn't be Yibum even if he did it, it shouldn't work. That's the end of the kasha, and Rava knocked off Rav Gidlam Arav. So we're going to have a couple of tries now, but so far, if Gidlam Arav said that there's a drasha to say that there's no mitzvah of Yibum by Chayvei Lavin, Rava knocked it off, because here it says that if he did it, it does take effect. That means that there's an Issa. You're not supposed to, but if he did it, it does take effect. So Rava has to speak up now and say his own shot. Elam Rava. Almana min ha'eres enami aseh v'lo sasehu. The Gemara thought that if she's almana only from Kiddushin, means the dead brother only gave her Kiddushin but didn't consummate the marriage. So it's only for the live brother, for the Kohen Gadol, to marry her is only going to be a lo aseh. There's no aseh. There's no aseh because she is a virgin. She is a virgin. So it's aseh. It's only a lo aseh. Don't take an almana. Don't take a widow. She's a widow because her husband died, even though he was Kiddushin. But there's no aseh. She still is a virgin. And they wanted a kasha aseh the lo aseh. But the Gemara is saying no, that even if she only that the Rabbi's answer is going to be that it's also aseh v'lo aseh. That even if it was not erisin, even if it's only erisin, there's also an aseh standing in the way. Not the mitzvah basula, because she's a basula, but what is the aseh going to be? The fact that it says they should be holy, that's a mitzvah aseh, and the holiness includes not to marry a almana. So besides being a pasuk, do not marry an almana, it also says be holy. Besides saying marry a virgin, it also says be holy. So that's an aseh. So again, the reason why I can't marry her really is they're in the parsha of Yibum, but it's incidental collision between the mitzvah of Yibum and the Isser of Aseh Velosa Aseh. There's not allowed to marry her, so you can't marry her. But if he did marry her, Rabbi will say, if he did marry her, it isn't the parsha. The Torah never spoke about this case. The Torah just said, do Yibum on one hand. On the other hand, it says Aseh Velosa Aseh about taking Almana. It's not like the first drasha. The first drasha was Volsivim to Ashara, that the pasuk didn't talk about the mitzvah of Yibum at all. By Chayvei Lavin, the Torah says only do Chalitza. Rabbi said it can't be. The Torah didn't talk about it. But what happens now? We have our own collision that happened over here between Yibum and a mitzvah saseh, v'lo saseh. So we say, the klolim of the rice are going to be that the Yibum cannot override. But if he did it, he transgressed. He did not have error. But still, the Yibum takes place in Bolu Kanu. The more conscious, there are other things that are still aseh the v'lo saseh. But that doesn't have anything to do with Kedoshim, not about Kahanim. And this the Gemara says also, even by regular Jews also, Kisiv is Kadishtem, by all the Gemara seems to say that all mitzvahs are included by being holy. Am Yisrael should be holy by doing all the mitzvahs. So it's always a general mitzvah aseh on all the mitzvahs that is all called an aseh. So it's always going to be aseh. It's not dochalos aseh v'aseh. But then the Gemara says, no, it can't be. If you're going to say that everything is always included in V'skadishtem, then there's no such thing as a lo saseh alone. Every lo saseh comes together with an aseh. And I think the Gemara means to say that even shatnez, climb b'tzitzis. You say that tzitzis overrides the issue of shatnez. Why? Because aseh dochel lo saseh. No, we'll say that it's also a lo saseh v'aseh. Every mitzvah is always kedusha. You can't say that because then there would be no such thing as I say the cholos aseh. So it must be that you're wrong. That's not the pshat. So this pshat also was wrong. So Rava went down from this pshat also. Next try, Elam Rava. Rava himself was going to still try, and he's going to be successful, I think, at the end. But this one didn't work. Elam Rava Gzera Almanim and Eris and not Almanim and Anasun. That it's only Gzera Rabbanan means that you're right. How come the Kohen Gadol does not marry the sister-in-law who's only an almanim and erisin? It's only a lo saseh, aseh dochel lo saseh. The answer is because of a gzera. Because if you're going to permit almanim and erisin, we're also going to permit almanim and anasun. That's also because that's aseh v'lo saseh. So therefore, they said don't marry. But if he did, then the marriage does take place because with the rice, it's a good marriage. The Torah did. He argues on the first drasha that says that all Chayvei Lavin are out of the parsha of Yibum. No, they're really in the parsha of Yibum. Now we go with the laws. We have to figure out the laws about aseh dochel lo saseh. So Amanim and Erisin is aseh dochel lo saseh. Amanim and Anasuin is ein aseh dochel lo saseh v'aseh. So that's the reason why you should not do Yibum to an arusa, but not because, or to almana, but not because inherently the Torah took off this mitzvah. The Master Kasha Mamzer Sunasina Michael. Why are you going to say about Mamzer Sunasina over there? You're going to say Gzeir because of the Kohen Gadol. That's not similar at all. No reason to make a Gzeir. No, Gzeir b'makam mitzvah to shalom b'makam mitzvah. Because if we're going to permit by Yibum to marry a Mamzeres, means really technically the Gemara says with the Raisa, if a Mamzeres falls to a brother, to a Yibum, so the mitzvah of Yibum overrides the Lo Saseh. He should marry the Mamzeres. I say the Lo Saseh. The reason why not is because then people are going to be Mater Mamzeres. They'll say this Chashav Yid, he married a Mamzeres. They won't realize that it's because of Yibum. I say the Lo Saseh. That's what it made Gzeir Drabanan. If you make such kind of gzeres that you're going to think that Yibum, even if it's not Yibum, also it's going to be mutter, so then you should say always that you shouldn't be able to do Yibum ever, even if it's the brother's wife, from the brother from the father, a paternal brother, because you'll say people will come to make a mistake and think that you can do Yibum also for the brother that's only half a brother from the mother, a maternal brother. And that's not true, because the Yibum is only from the father. Like we said, I forgot the drasha we had. The Nachla over there, that has to be that they're Achim and Nachla, but the people don't know that. The Gemara says no, everyone knows that. Even when Nachla tell the Rahmana made the idea. The Gemara says no, everybody knows going to make such a mistake. There's no reason to make it Rabban. Everybody knows that Yibam has to do with Nachla, and therefore only brothers from common father. Other kashas. You might think that if you're going to permit to marry a brother, sister, because there's no children, people will come to say you're allowed to marry a brother, sister, even if there are children. And they won't realize it's a deraisa chiv kares to marry a brother sister only when there's no children. The Gemara says no. Also, everybody knows that the Ban Tali Rahmana made the idea. Everybody knows that the mitzvah of Yibum is because there are no children, and if there are children, they do not allow to marry brothers. His brother's wife, even if he was not born, even if he was not, he never saw him, even if he did see him, even if he did not see him. So because of that, make the issue always. The Gemara says no. Also, everyone knows that also. Yeshiva Tol Rachmana made the idea. Everybody knows that has to do Keish Achim only if they saw each other. If they didn't see each other, everybody knows that there's no Yibum, and they're not going to come to make the mistake. The Master Kasha Kol Hanashim Lo Tisliabna Tishabemna Gizei Misham Islanders. Maybe you shouldn't do Yibum ever, because if you can do Yibum, so then they make a mistake and even do Yibum to an islandess also. And here the Gemara doesn't say everybody knows. I would have thought this is the most everybody knows. Everybody knows the mitzvah of Yibum is in order to have children. And they don't know she's an island, so then there was a mekachtos. Then the harder case is going to be that the people are not going to be outsiders are not going to know that she's an islandess. Okay, but the other ones also. Then I think all these other cases also you should say that maybe have to look back to see.
Four cases.
So the Gemara still tries is lo shchicha. The Gemara says islandess. That it's not usual there should be an islandess, and therefore we don't have to make a gzeir for that. But then the Gemara says on this last one, if you say that, then mamzeres unesina nam lo shchicha. It's not shchicha to have a mamzeres unesina also. So there's no reason to make the gzeira. So this knocked off the pshat. Again, the kasha was, how come you don't do Yibum? All these cases, you should say, the cases of the Mishnah, Aman L'Kohen Gadol. So over there, we had to say the Lo Saseh, if it's Minah Nesuin. But otherwise, when Eris and not, the Gemara said Gzeira. The Gemara tries to about all the other cases about Mamzer Sunasim Yisrael. Why are you going to say that it's Asa? I say the Lo Saseh. The Gemara tries to say Gzeira. People will come to say that you're allowed to marry a Mamzeres. So the Gemara says, no, it's not Shchicha. There's no reason to make a Gzeira. So this terrace also fell off, and we're back to the Kasha again. How come you don't say asay dochalos asay and permit Chayv Elavan to do Yibum? First white line, Ela Amarava Gzeira be a Rishon to be a Shneya. It's true that asay dochalos asay and he should be able to have the first relation, that he should take his brother's wife and have relations one time, because the mitzvah is only the first time. It's true. Regular Yibum, after they do Yibum, they're allowed to stay married. It doesn't have to be that he only has relations one time in order to be able to give his brother seed, and then he doesn't. Then he stops relations with her. You're right. Yibum permits them to be married happily ever after. But that's only when there's no Avera involved. But here it is a Avera because she's a Eva Midaraisa, not a Krisus, but it's a Chayv Elavan. But then it's only going to be a Sedar Cholosa, say only the first time. After that, he wouldn't be allowed to. And if you're going to say that he could marry her the first for one Bia, one relation, so then they're going to think that it's mutter from now on, like any kind of Yibum. Because of that, we have to stop it. And we say, don't, and that answer is going to stay. This answer, that Gezer be Rishano to be a Shniya, I think that the Gemara is going to hold on to that. We'll see a little bit further. It goes on to the bottom of the page. So the Gemara says that the reason why it's usher because of Gzera. But first of all, what's the Gzera? Is the Gzera going to be because of Mamzeres? So now the Gemara says, no, it's usher because of Gzera that he might stay with her even after he has the first time relationship. And that's really usher. It's only usher, only mutter the first time. That's what the Gemara says. The Brisa says openly like this, that it's mutter the first time, only the first bia is mutter. And even if he shouldn't have married her, but if he did, it takes effect because really there is such a mitzvah. Just I say because I say derecholosa, but to make Xera not to. That's going to be a deraisa to continue remaining because there's no asay anymore. Then Rava thought he had a better shot. Rava was the one who said this, and it's going to stay. But Rava said, I made a mistake, and there's even a better teretz. That all the chayv eleven, even though it's just a deraisa, but I say dochalosa say. If it's a chiv kores, then I say it's not dochalosa say sheish because those are the 15 arayis. But if it's only a chayv eleven, I say dochalosa say. So that was the kasha. How come all these chayv eleven? How come they can't marry? So the Gemara says a partial answer that it's only if you have no other choice how to do both of them. There's asay, los asay. You can't satisfy both of them. So then the asay overrides the los asay. But over here, since the Torah gave an option of chalitza, so there is a way how you can do everything. The Torah only doesn't say absolutely do yibum. The Torah says yibum or chalitza. So since here it's possible to do b'chalitza, there's a way to satisfy both of them. That's the reason why don't do the mitzvah of yibum does not override the los asay because it's possible to do chalitza. The Gemara knocks it off. Then knocks it off. The Gemara thinks, according to that, if there's no reason ever to do yibum because you always can do chalitza, so then the Torah never said to do yibum. If the Torah never said to do yibum, the Gemara considers that as if there's no mitzvah of yibum, and then even if he had relations, it shouldn't work. And the fact that it says in Baal Lukanu, which was Rav's own kasha, so the Gemara thinks that's a kasha on him also, and therefore this last terrace, I think it's number 5, is off. That it's not called Efshel L'Kaim Shneim, and therefore the teretz remains what we said on the second wide line, Gezerah bia rishana to bia shniya. So that's the end of the Gemara. One big sugya that said that by Issa Daraisa or Issa Rabbanan, that there's chalitza. If it's a Issa Arayas creases, then there's no chalitza either, nothing. She just goes free. But if it will be Issa Daraisa and Shol Issa Rabbanan, so that she shouldn't do even she should do chalitza. The Mor's kasha was one to say the chalosa say, and the answer comes out to this one teretz that is Xera. He might stay with her even after the initial yibum, and really he's not allowed to anymore because you don't have that say anymore. That say is only the first time. After there's just permission. It's not a mitzvah anymore. He's allowed to stay with her. But in case that is, since over here there's a issa to remain with her, he'd have to divorce her after the first time, separate, and we're scared they're going to continue. That's the reason why they said that he should not do yibum, only chalitza.
I have one question. Maybe I missed it, but we had the case of two sisters. One was Isa Eva. So the other sister. So he's the brothers allowed to do Yvonne with the other sister. But
right. I put it on the screen over here. The case you're talking about. That's the case of Isa Erva.
Yeah. So, but the case of she's yellow.
Right. If it would only be Issa, only be Issa, right? If it only would have been an Issa, then the Gemara says it would be called as Kuka. She would be called as Kuka, and you'd have to have Chalitza. Yeah, I'm sorry. It'd be a Achos Kuka, and the Gemara said before that he would not be able to marry because it still is called Achos Kuka on the Raisa level. That fits good. Fits good. That is
okay. Fine. Okay.
Okay. Yashikach, everybody. Thank you. We'll be back in 2 minutes with Hilchos Pesach again.
Thank you.